Welcome back to Pushing Pixels. I am your host, Sam Mestis, and today we are going to do something insanely simple. This is a little project I do in the class I teach in, Photoshop for Beginners, and I'd be remiss to say that I did this. This is actually a Corey Barker tutorial that I sort of modified on the back end, but like I said, it's a real great way to jump off into Photoshop and just do something really quick for beginners. And I want to also give this to my students so they can review outside of class. So here we go. So we're going to start off, we're going to make this little tiny sort of brochure ad or front page brochure. And it starts with this texture map right here. This is sort of a, I don't want to call it Celtic, it's kind of an English background. But we're going to use this and we are going to make a pattern out of it, because we're going to use that pattern in another image. So to make a pattern, we're going to go up to Edit and down here to Define Pattern. And it's going to ask me to name it. I'm going to call this Classical Background, UND, Classical Background. Did I spell that right? I did, and I'm going to save that. All right, it is now stored in my patterns library. I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to close that, and I am going to start a new document at, as that comes up, we're going to do it in inches, so we're going to do 7 by 7. We're going to make it square, and let's just do 100 DPI for resolution. And there I go. There's my document. And right off the bat, it just has a black background. I'm going to give it a new layer. Command-N. Whoa, that's not it. I'm sorry. Command-Shift-N will give me my new layer. And I'm going to call this background. G-R-O-U-N-D. And return. You can also use the new layer button down there if you needed to use it. In fact, here, I'll just dump that. And down here, the new layer button, I can click that and gives me my new layer. I will rename it again. B-A-C-K-G-R-O-U-N-D. Background. Great. Now, on that background, I need to put the new pattern we have. And we just made that pattern. It's right here in our patterns. But before I do that, you can't put a layer effect on a layer that's empty. So I'm just going to fill this layer with a color. And in this case, I'll just use gray. Shift-Delete will get me there. And I am going to hit the pull down and go to 50% gray. I'm just going to fill this layer with some gray. There you go. No problem. All right, now that I have the layer filled with gray, I can apply the pattern that we made earlier. Oh, that's my phone. Don't worry about that. Double click your new background layer right here, and it's going to bring up the Layer Styles dialog. And as you can see, there's tons of things we can add, but in this case, we're going to add the pattern we made. So if you click on Pattern right here, just click the name, it turns it on, and by default, it grabbed the very first one that was in there. And if you hit this little pull down here, you're going to get all these patterns that are loaded, and in this case, there's the one we made earlier. It is that pattern right there. That's a little large, so I'm going to scale it down to about, let's say, about 25. 25 looks pretty good. So I'm going to scale it down to 25 with a little slider right there. Just slide it down, and I don't know, it looks kind of bland. Let's sort of give it some life. Let's put a little spotlight on it. And to do that, we are going to apply a gradient mask on this. And you can already see right here what's happening in the gradient mask. In fact, you can actually see it on the screen here. I'll turn it off and on. It's giving me a little spotlight here. And let's talk about the settings I'm using. I'm using overlay as a blend mode. I'm using white to black. Cancel. And I'm using a radial, which is giving me the circle. If I used a linear, I would get a vertical deal, grading across, in this case black to white, left to right. But we're going to use radial. And if you reach in the canvas, you should be able to move it around. I don't know why it's not. Let me reset alignment. There we go. Interesting that it doesn't want to move around. Let's try that again. Let's put our pattern back in and rescale that to 25. Yeah, it's close enough. And then gradient tool, radial, overlay. I got my opacity set pretty low. I can turn it up a little bit. Maybe I'll turn it up to about 50. There you go. For some reason it's letting me move. And now I can reach into my canvas and move my spotlight pretty much wherever I want. You can see also on the right side what it'll look like right there in the preview window. It's kind of small. But I'm going to put it up here just a little bit up in the corner, more towards the upper right corner, right about there. Perfect. Again, I got 50 as a preset, and scale is at 122. That seems about okay. All right, so I got my pattern. And I got my gradient all set up. I'm going to click OK and get out of this. And then I'm going to go to this image right here. This is a viola, either one. This is from obviously iStock Photo that I'm using. But I need to get rid of the white. And luckily for me, I got a pretty hard edge on this whole deal, and the white seems pretty consistent. So I'm actually just going to use the magic wand tool to get out of that. Fourth tool down, and it's buried underneath my quick select tool. It's right there, fourth tool down, magic wand. And I am going to click on the white area, and it will select the entire white area. Make sure you have contiguous clicked at the top in the options bar. So I got white selected. Here, I'll do that again real quick. White, and you can see the marching ants all the way around it. But I don't need the white. I honestly, I need the violin. So we need to invert the selection, because right now we have white selected. So if I go up to select inverse, it will invert my selection, and now my violin is selected. You can also hit Command-Shift-I. Will get you the exact same command. In fact, if you look at select, you see Command-Shift-I right there. So I got my violin selected, but now I need it on its own layer. It's still on the layer with the white. So I'm going to hit Command-J, which is copy via layer, and copy it to its own layer now. Completely separate from the background. I don't need it anymore. I don't need the background anymore. I just need the violin. So we're going to take that violin now and stick it in our image. And to do that, I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and I'm going to grab this layer and drag it all the way across to my working document, and there it is. Shift centers the object. That's why you're holding down the Shift key. Alright, I don't need my violin anymore, so I'm going to say goodbye to that, and now I'm going to work in this image. As you can see, my violin's too big for my document, but there's a way around that. So we're going to free transform this, and there's a couple ways to get to free transform. You can hit Command-T, which will get you to free transform, or you can go up to Edit and hit free transform. There's also Command-T right there. So Command-T gets us, and it puts this bounding box around my image with a center point, and these two handles that I can grab and pull and shape. But I can't see all the handles because they're way off my document. So I'm going to hit Command-0, and Command-0 is Zoom Extents. And now I can see the entire length of my violin document, and I can just grab inside there and move around. It's a little big, so I need to scale it down. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and drag in. If I don't hold down Shift and Alt and I start grabbing deals, it doesn't constrain it, so I can potentially destroy this image unless I'm holding down Shift and Alt. So I definitely want to constrain it. So Shift and Alt, grab a corner, and I'm going to scale it down a bit and move it into my document. I kind of want it to be just mostly the body of this. I'm just going to have it go right there. Perfect. All right, so it's not looking too bad now. Really simple. I got 2 layers, no big deal. One of the other things I want to do though is the lighting is a little wonky on this thing. It's a little bit flat. The whole image is kind of flat. Not too bad here, but a little bit flat. And since my lighting is coming from up here, sort of down, front lit, I want to make this a little bit harsh, a little bit brighter, and a little bit darker here. So we're going to actually put a gradient on it just like we did down here. So I'm going to double click the violin layer and apply a gradient. And I'm just going to click on the name, and that already looks pretty good. It's defaulting to the last gradient I used, the settings I used last time. They are a little bit harsh, so maybe I'll turn down the opacity just a bit. And if I turn it off and on, you can kind of see what's happening there. And it's helping my lighting situation. Now it looks like it's really lit from about the same place the background has been lit. The other thing we have to do is give it some space. We need to give it a little bit of volume and offset it from the background, but let it know that it's in the same room or it was shot in the same environment. So I'm going to add a drop shadow. I'm just going to click drop shadow here. And ideally, since the light's here, the drop shadow should be on this side, but I'm actually going to move it over a little bit. And I'm actually reaching inside the canvas and moving it around to exactly where I want it. You can also see it in the preview there. So that's the drop shadow right there. And I'm just going to move it to the right just a little bit. And it's a little bit washed out, so I'm going to bring down the size just to about, I want it to look like it's close to the background. Say 10. And I'm going to move it in there. I'm just going to grab my mouse and drag it in there a little bit. Get it right where I want it. And that's not bad. There you go. My distance is at 32. My size is at 13. And I have it set to multiply. Multiply is going to bring out the blacks. So, and there we go with that. Not too bad. It's going pretty good there. I'm going to click OK. Got my gradient working. And I got my drop shadow working. And I'm going to hit OK with that. Yeah, that's good. All right, looking pretty good now. Let's add one more effect here. Not even an effect. Let's add some text. I'm going to hit T for text, or you can grab it right there in the menu. And with we need to pick a sort of we need to pick kind of a serif font. I'm going to use Times, and I'm going to use size 36 from the pull down up here. I'm still on the text tool, right there, on your left there. And right here, I'm going to type learn. Well, let's do it in uppercase. Learn. Before I do that, let's set it to center justifier. Center's right there. Learn from the masters. There we go. I'm going to select it. It's a little bit too far apart from me. All right, perfect. And I'm going to use my move tool up top there and just move it into place. That's the move tool up there at the very top. And there you go. And that's how we do this in class. We just make this cute little project. And it's nice and fun. It's a real simple project to learn from. Hey, thanks for watching, and you have a good day.